These are the headlines we're following at this hour. President Yoon will depart for Camp David later today for his summit with leaders of the U.S. and Japan in what is expected to be a historic milestone for trilateral cooperation with key initiatives expected on the security front. The U.S. has set sanctions on 3 entities tied to arms deals between North Korea and Russia in its latest attempt to restrict Russia's war efforts against Ukraine. The South Korean government seeks to speed up economic recovery by easing regulations on investments in the tech industry for AI and flying cars, along with increased assistance for exports and the tourism sector. Good afternoon. President Yoon will depart for the U.S. later today for his summit with the U.S. President Joe Biden and Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida at Camp David on Friday. Beforehand, he sent off his late father on the last day of the 3-day mourning period. The president's father was brought to a cemetery in Gyeonggi province just outside Seoul this morning. Yoon Gi-jung, a professor emeritus of Yonsei University, died on Tuesday at the age of 92. President Yoon will return to Seoul later today before leaving for his trip. Ahead of Camp David summit, officials from both the presidential office in Seoul and the White House are anticipating the summit to pave the way for a historic milestone in the Seoul-Washington-Tokyo trilateral cooperation with ambitious initiatives expected on the security front. Our top office correspondent Oh Soo-young tells us more.
The leaders of South Korea, the United States and Japan will pave the way for a new era of security and economic initiatives in the Indo-Pacific region as they gather at a landmark meeting at Camp David on Friday. That's according to a senior official in comments to Arirang News before President Yoon Suk-yeol sets off Thursday for the US. As the 3 countries face growing nuclear and missile threats from North Korea and economic uncertainties, the summit is to institutionalize a mechanism for greater cooperation based on their shared values of freedom, peace and prosperity. White House officials also remarked on Wednesday local time that the 3 countries will set 3-way cooperation into motion with ambitious initiatives in the leaders' joint statement. White House Indo-Pacific Chief Kurt Campbell said the document would include making 3-way talks between the leaders an annual occasion, along with efforts to invest in a 3-way crisis hotline between them. While such measures would stop short of forming an official security arrangement, Campbell said the 3-way efforts would become a defining trilateral relationship for the 21st century. Korean and US officials in recent days said the framework for cooperation will include regular annual joint military drills, possibly including missile interception training, cyber defense, and a real-time missile warning system. North Korea last year tested at least 65 missiles and has fostered its asymmetric capabilities. White House National Security Council official John Kirby has said the 3 countries are also expected to tighten cooperation beyond military to diverse areas. Experts say a key area will be supply chain cooperation, particularly on sensitive technologies and rare minerals.
They'll be pushing to continue the so-called de-risking policy of trying to reduce dependency on China for rare earth minerals and other important components, and particularly semiconductors there, of course.
The 3-way talks on Friday will be an unprecedented standalone event between Washington and its 2 allies, compared to previous gatherings which have taken place on the sidelines of other multilateral summits or conferences. Inspired by the venue of the summit, the leaders are also expected to issue a separate vision statement dubbed the Camp David Principles according to Axios. While it's likely there'll be a mention of protecting the rule-based world order and possibly peace and stability in the Taiwan Strait, a Yoon official has said the document is not likely to issue words confronting China. Oh Soo-young, Arirang News.
Now on to the summit's venue, Camp David. The U.S. presidential retreat has a history of holding landmark summits and discussions, and Yoon will become the first South Korean leader to visit in 15 years. Choi Min-jung reports.
In 2008, former President Lee Myung-bak became the first South Korean president to visit Camp David, the U.S. presidential country retreat, at the invitation of then U.S. leader George Bush. Driving in a golf cart, the 2 leaders boasted their friendship and promised a stronger alliance. Camp David holds a special meaning in international diplomacy. For more than 80 years, the residence has been used to host summits and intimate diplomatic negotiations. In 1943, the United Kingdom's Prime Minister Winston Churchill attended the first such meeting to discuss the Second World War with U.S. President Franklin D. Roosevelt. In 1978, leaders of Egypt and Israel held peace talks mediated by the U.S. in what we now know as the Camp David Accords. On August 18th, President Biden will host South Korea's President Yoon and Japan's Prime Minister Fumio Kishida at the venue for their first ever standalone summit. Biden has visited the retreat dozens of times since taking office, but had never invited a foreign leader. U.S. National Security Council spokesman John Kirby said last week that Camp David has been a historic setting for summits and for foreign policy conversations, and added that Biden is looking forward to hosting a discussion of historic proportions. An expert pointed out that the trilateral meeting set to be held at the presidential retreat is in stark contrast to North Korea, China, and Russia's display of solidarity at the recent military parade held in Pyongyang.
It shows South Korea, the US, and Japan do not only pursue military alliances, but also solidarity that pursues universal human values like freedom, peace, human rights, prosperity, and the rule of law. To achieve this, they are strengthening solidarity in a fairly relaxed atmosphere.
All eyes are now on whether Friday's gathering at Camp David will mark a new era in Seoul, Washington, and Tokyo's trilateral cooperation. Choi Min-jung, Arirang News.
The U.S. has slapped sanctions on 3 entities tied to arms deals between North Korea and Russia in its latest attempt to restrict Russia's war efforts against Ukraine, Lee Seung-jae reports.
The U.S. Department of Treasury's Office of Foreign Assets Controls announced on Wednesday that it has imposed fresh sanctions against 3 entities involved in illicit arms deals between North Korea and Russia. The department issued sanctions against Velrus LLC, Defense Engineering LLP, and Versor SRO. The 3 companies are all either owned or led by Slovakian national Ashot Merkichev. The Slovakian was also sanctioned back on March 30, 2023, for attempting to facilitate arms trade between Pyongyang and Moscow. In its press release, the department stressed that the latest sanctions are a part of the continuing U.S. strategy to identify, expose, and disrupt third-country actors seeking to support Russia's brutal war against Ukraine. Speculation that the Kremlin and North Korea might be looking to trade arms comes as Russian Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu visited Pyongyang as part of a delegation that marked the 70th anniversary of the Korean War armistice last month. Pundits say Shoigu's visit may indicate increasing military cooperation between Pyongyang and Moscow. The U.S. Treasury Department also noted that Russia has increasingly been forced to turn to North Korea to continue and sustain its war against Ukraine as it expends munitions and loses heavy equipment on the battlefield. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
The White House says the U.S. is seeking and will continue to seek the safe return of U.S. soldier Private Travis King, who crossed into North Korea last month. It also dismissed the regime's claim the soldier was seeking refuge in the North. That is according to National Security Council Coordinator for Strategic Communications, John Kirby, on Thursday, who said those claims have got to be looked at skeptically. He added that Washington still wants to know the soldier's whereabouts and safety, and that the U.S. has made it clear to the North that it wants the soldier back. On Wednesday, North Korea's state-run media reported Pyongyang's first public confirmation of Travis King, saying he sought refuge there or in a third country, citing maltreatment and racial discrimination by the U.S. Army. Over in Hawaii, the death toll from the devastating wildfires in Maui has now risen to 110. And there are now videos released by local residents which may capture the moment when the blazes first broke out. Our Kim Jung-sil with the latest.
A video that might have captured the start of the deadly wildfires in Maui.
Oh, this is live right across the street from my house. Freaking power line just went down. Tried my little water hose, but I hear a pop coming from across the street, and shortly after, thing was just arcing away on the ground, landed right in dry grass, so sparks, and then there was a fire.
He said he saw a fire break out across from his house at dawn on Tuesday, the same time that officials estimated that the initial fire broke out. His video captures images of the fire becoming even larger, burning the dry grass on the ground. Shane True says in just a matter of minutes, the whole place was engulfed by fire. AP News reported that his video has emerged as key evidence of what might have started the fire. There are other videos, such as CCTV cameras, that captured a moment of a tree falling down on an electric line and a fire starting not long after that. A lawsuit has already been filed against the local electric company, Hawaiian Electric. Due to the nature of the disaster, identifying the victims has become a challenge. Only 5 of the dead had been identified, according to officials. Hawaii Governor Josh Green has said that 27% of the search and rescue is complete and that he hopes much will be covered by the weekend. The death toll will likely rise as residents of the town of Lahaina say many seniors lived in complexes in the area where the fire hit. The residents told local media that they know only a handful of people who managed to escape, suggesting there might be more victims from the senior complexes. The White House announced on Wednesday that U.S. President Joe Biden and his wife will be visiting Maui on Monday, where they'll meet first responders, survivors, as well as local officials. Kim Jong-sil, Arirang News.
Staying on Maui, the South Korean government delivered on Wednesday the first portion of emergency aid to Hawaii. South Korean Consul General to Honolulu, Lee Seo-young, delivered the aid to Hawaii Lieutenant Governor Sylvia Luke. This is part of the South Korean government's aid relief to Maui to help local people get back on with their lives as soon as possible. The emergency aid included water, food, and blankets, as well as power generators, as requested by Hawaii's local authorities. Earlier this week, the South Korean government pledged to provide Hawaii with $2 million of humanitarian aid. The South Korean government seeks to speed up economic recovery by easing regulations on investments in the tech industry for AI and flying cars, along with increased assistance for exports and the tourism sector. Lee Soo-jin reports.
South Korea's government is taking further steps to not only boost exports, but also investment. Finance Minister Chu Kyo-ho on Thursday held an emergency meeting on the economy with related ministers and said that although the nation's export downturn is starting to level out, the government will continue to strengthen efforts to achieve a quicker economic recovery. One way the government is planning to do this is by promoting promising new industries such as AI semiconductors and urban air mobility. The measures include building data centers that utilize AI chips, as well as increasing financial support for startups that produce system semiconductors. The Finance Ministry also said that it will work with related ministries to build a frequency specific to the UAM industry as part of its efforts to boost Korea's presence in the global UAM market. The battery market is another area that the government is planning to promote. The Finance, Trade, and the Environment Ministries will work together to expand the reuse and recycling of batteries. The government will also make efforts to encourage investment.
Increasing investment along with exports is very important in achieving a quick economic recovery.
To boost eco-friendly investment, South Korea will introduce safety standards so that hydrogen charging stations can be established in areas frequented by a lot of drivers to make hydrogen cars more convenient. The Finance Ministry also said that it will speed up its efforts to create an advanced biotech cluster in Osong, a town that the government has been seeking to develop as a biomedical hub to increase investment in biotechnology. The government will also soon unveil measures in response to China lifting its ban on group tours to South Korea.
We will promptly prepare measures, including making entry requirements easier to meet, as well as developing various tourist programs to attract Chinese tourists.
The finance ministry also said efforts will be made across the government to support a complete economic recovery. 이수진, Arirang News.
After 2 months of decline, prices for South Korea's exports and imports rose in July, driven by higher fuel prices. According to the Bank of Korea on Thursday, the price index for exports rose 0.1% in July from a month earlier, as prices increased for petroleum products. Agricultural exports and manufactured goods also saw an increase, and South Korea's rate of inflation may see a knock-on effect as imports also rose by 0.4% on month. However, compared to the previous year, July's figure for both exports and imports saw an on-year decrease of more than 10%. China has lifted its ban on group tours to South Korea for the first time in more than 6 years since Seoul's deployment of a U.S. defense system. And related industries, including tourism and retail, are busy preparing to welcome the tourists back. Our business correspondent Shin Ha-young tells us what to expect.
Local businesses such as those in tourism, cosmetics, and duty-free shops have welcomed China's latest move, which lifts a ban on Chinese tour groups. They're expecting sales to recover after being hit hard by the COVID-19 pandemic and the drop in the number of tourists from China after restrictions were imposed 6 years ago.
We are expecting sales to improve with more Chinese tourists. We are preparing a variety of joint promotions with tourism businesses and airlines to enhance the shopping convenience for Chinese tourists.
I hope it provides an opportunity, especially for small business owners, to resume their operations.
Individual Chinese tourists have been able to travel to South Korea, but the big deal about the tour groups is how much they spend. Data from the Korea Tourism Organization shows the number of Chinese tourists, which surpassed 8 million in 2016, was reduced by nearly half in 2017 due to the deployment of the U.S. missile defense system. Then the COVID-19 pandemic caused the numbers to plunge further. With Beijing allowing group tours to resume, Seoul's travel deficit is one of the key areas that is expected to see a recovery. The country's travel balance during the first half of this year recorded a $4.65 billion deficit, the biggest deficit for the same period since 2018. There has been a travel deficit for 22 consecutive years up to 2022. And South Korea could reach its 23rd year in the red if this trend continues, so all eyes are now on the Chinese tour groups. However, while an expert says there will be an improvement in South Korea's travel deficit, whether or not there is a return to a surplus remains uncertain as Chinese consumer behavior has changed.
Japan is one of the preferred travel destinations for Chinese tourists. This is due to its proximity, strong preference for Japanese products, and the depreciation of the Japanese yen. As the cost of living in China is low, it is dealing with deflationary concerns, while South Korea is experiencing relatively high inflation.
Meanwhile, after allowing group tours, in just one day on Friday, reservations were made for a total of 53 Chinese cruise ships to visit Jeju, meaning that more Chinese tourists are expected to visit South Korea from now on. Shin Ha-young, Arirang News.
South Korea plans to become a top 10 destination for studying by doubling its international student enrollment numbers through 2027. The Education Ministry revealed this plan on Wednesday to attract as many as 300,000 international students within the next 4 years. Currently, there are only around 160,000 foreign students studying in South Korea. The government will focus on foreign students in the STEM fields, namely science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. The plan aims to address the nation's rapidly declining school-age population, as well as to strengthen the country's global education competitiveness. On the local political front, the main opposition Democratic Party chairman Lee Jae-myung appeared for questioning at the prosecutor's office earlier on Thursday amid allegations of a breach of trust. Lee is being accused of giving special developmental favors to a private contractor during the construction of apartment complexes in Baekhyun-dong neighborhood of Seongnam City back in 2014 and 2015 while serving as the city's mayor. Although accused of receiving money in return, Yi is denying all allegations, saying that the investigation is being fabricated by the political prosecution. This is the fourth time Yi has been questioned by the prosecution and the first time in 6 months.
Let's take a look at what's going on in the world now. In the Black Sea, a Hong Kong-flagged cargo ship left the Ukrainian port city of Odessa on Wednesday, despite fears that the Russian Navy could target ships. The move is a first test of a humanitarian corridor announced by Kyiv last week that allows ships to leave its ports. It's mainly meant for vessels that have been trapped since Russia launched its invasion in February 2022. Russia has not said whether it will respect the corridor and launched an attack on Ukrainian grain storage facilities in Reni as the ship departed. On Sunday, Russia fired warning shots at and boarded a Palau-flagged cargo vessel heading toward Ukraine to search for weapons. In July, Moscow pulled out of a UN-brokered grain deal that guaranteed safe passage for ships carrying foodstuffs across the Black Sea. The Kremlin has since warned that ships going to Ukrainian ports could be considered a military target. In eastern Pakistan, a mob made up of thousands of Muslims attacked and burned several churches and homes belonging to Christians over allegations that 2 Christian men desecrated the Quran. The attacks took place in Jaranwala on Wednesday after claims the men had written insults and derogatory remarks in the Muslim holy book. No casualties have been reported, but the government has deployed police officers and the army to calm the situation. Dozens of rioters have been arrested and an investigation has been launched. Blasphemy is punishable by death in Pakistan, a country where over 95% of the population are Muslims. In the United Kingdom, the British Museum announced on Wednesday that it had fired a staff member amid reports of items going missing, being stolen or damaged. Among the items are gold, jewelry and semi-precious stones, dating as far back as the 15th century BC. Most of the items were kept in a storeroom for research purposes. The items had reportedly gone missing before 2023 and over a significant period of time. The museum said it is reviewing its security practices and is working to recover the missing treasures. The police are also investigating, but no arrests have been made yet. It's not the first time valuable items have gone missing from the museum. In 2017, the institute announced that it had lost a diamond Cartier ring valued at almost $1 million. And finally, European champions England are set to face Spain in the 2023 Women's World Cup final after beating Australia 3-1 in Sydney on Wednesday. The Lionesses were the first to draw blood in an entertaining encounter before the Matildas, fighting to keep their World Cup dreams alive, equalised in the second half through a superb individual effort by star striker Sam Kerr. But the tournament co-hosts were ultimately sent home after England sealed their domination with another 2 goals. England will now face Spain in Sydney on Sunday in the first World Cup final match for both teams. Australia take on Sweden on Saturday in Brisbane in the third-place playoff. Matthew Ashley, Arirang News.
Good afternoon. Searing heat usually subsides after Liberation Day here in Korea, and it surely did. Mornings and evenings have gotten a lot more bearable, but in terms of afternoon heat, it doesn't want to go away just yet. Top temperatures are slightly higher than norms under mostly sunny skies in most parts, but we still can rule out the chance of 5 to 60 millimeters of passing rain, and southern inland areas will will be seeing heavier passing showers during the day with thunder and lightning. So along with the heat, there will be moisture in the air. And feels like temperatures are a couple of degrees higher than what the thermometer indicates this afternoon. Daily highs are hovering in the low 30s again. Dress light and drink plenty of water. In fact, afternoon temperatures will stay sweltering for the remainder of the month. Meanwhile, brace for frequent passing rain and please keep an umbrella handy. That's Korea for you, and here's a look at the international weather conditions.
Now, the definition of having a multi-child family in South Korea will be changed. It used to be having 3 or more children. But from now, parents with 2 children can qualify for a multi-child family and get the benefits that follow, like priority passes in public housing sales, benefits at daycare centers attached to elementary schools, lower education fees, tax cuts when buying cars, and discounts at public museums and theaters. All this as South Korea seeks to tackle its chronically low birth rate, now at the world's lowest. That's all for today. Thanks for watching.